No business has to be boring. The future has no place for complacent brands.
Thanks for coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So you and I have been friends for a bit. What do we got? You think 6-ish years?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
All
About
right.
6 years.
We were in a little networking group together, entrepreneurs organization. We'll call out to EO. It's a great group. So a little funny story. So we were trying to come up with a name. So like my nickname was Big Bird. Matt was Panda.
Mm-hmm.
We thought
I'm
maybe it's
aware.
Panda Bird Creative. I tell you about the name. Just like that. Like I wake up the next morning, you created a Panda Bird logo. I'll pop it up. Ding. So just see how amazing it was.
Yeah.
You did an amazing job with that.
Thank you.
You're a
It was
very
fun.
creative guy. Like we have Panda Bird Creative, but like I'm not really a creative person. I mean, I'm a sales guy, right? But you, when you meet like a creative person, it's like it shows in everything. It shows in the style. It's the design is amazing. When I go to your office, there's certain people that are innately creative, and you're one of those guys.
Thank you. I believe so are you. I think you're cutting yourself short by saying you're not creative. I actually think you're one of the, I've told you this before, I think you're one of the most creative people I know. I think you're just in an industry that doesn't talk about it enough or doesn't value it enough. I've been doing sales as far as I can remember, but doesn't take away from being any less creative or designful.
Fair, that's fair. Mechanic is not your first company, so
No.
tell me about how did you get to Mechanic? Where did you start?
I'll make it quick because it's a long story.
Yeah.
Like my grandma's story.
Oh my gosh, the
We're not going
greatest
to do that.
story
We're not
ever.
going to do that today.
People do not.
That would
understand
be a
this.
long podcast.
First time I met you, you told me about your grandma, and it was you told it as an hour. It was an hour
It was
story.
about an hour
And
story.
I was like, I wish it had gone for 2 hours.
My grandmother on my other side, my family is creative and entrepreneurial. And so I started my career pretty young. I started in design at the young age of 15. I was, I think, the youngest graphic designer for Kinko's back when Kinko's was Kinko's and not FedEx. Fast forward, started my first agency in DC in 2004. Ended up rolling up in-house and building a team in-house with a great organization. Did that for a few years, left, started another agency and started teaching university. Did that for a couple of years, then merged with another agency. That didn't go well, but it happens. And then 10 years ago, my wife and I started Mekanic, brought on my business partner, Alex, built the team, brought on another partner, Stuart Perkins, a year ago. So yeah, it's been a, close to 30-year ride, but really the last 20 years I've been focused on running a creative agency.
Yeah. How many people do you have that are more like operational in a creative agency, or is everyone creative?
I think everybody is creative. They just don't always have the opportunity to live it, to show it, to experience it, to embrace it. Kind of like you started the conversation, you're not creative. Totally not true. Same thing with my business partner. He runs operations. He's our COO, de facto CFO. He's one of the most creative guys I know. We do a lot of naming work for our clients. His ideas regularly make it to the final, if not the name that's picked. So I would say my whole team is creative, I'd say, but really 30%, 20 to 30% of the team is focused on operations.
All right. So what's what is something you see a lot of companies get wrong with branding?
Too many people focus on a thing, right? The logo, the website, the ad campaign, the name.
Yeah.
And as we look at creative and branding specifically for us, because that's what our biggest focus is in marketing, it's all of those things, right? And it's all of those things working as an ecosystem. And I think what most people get wrong is they kind of look for a silver bullet, that one thing, as opposed to an entire ecosystem of things, right? It's how you show up on social media, it's how you show up in meetings, it's how you show up in a sales pitch. It's how you show up in the clothes you wear, right? Design is not simply just either a function or an aesthetic, but it is a way in which a person or business conducts themselves.
Well, a lot of times I think people think like, oh, I need the perfect name, which I go back and forth on name. A lot of times I don't think name matters because it's all the other things that you just said.
People think, oh, it's instinctually great. It's not. There's Zillow. I'm sure whenever somebody pitched Zillow, people were like, what? Uber, some of these names, they mean nothing until you give them meaning.
I just talked to a guy about 10 minutes ago on a phone call. Has a new company, because what I've been trying to explain to him is it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. But he wants to do gas to go, all right? So he wants to bring gas to you. So they do exist out there. There's other companies that do it. In fact, when I was in California, it used to exist. It was called Purple at the time. And I was like, this is a good idea. And it didn't survive. So point is, he's like, I need a great name. I need a guy. I'm like, I got a guy for you. So I just got you doing the bigs. So you're going to need to help him out. But like, I want to go with, I've got gas. You know, like, hey, yeah, you're going to remember that. All right,
100%.
Sure, it might not be. He's like, it's still too much. You're a little too ridiculous.
Or just got gas, question mark.
Yeah, that too, got gas. I've got gas. I thought I've got gas would be pretty funny. T-shirts. When people come to you and they don't have a clear vision, they have no idea where to go, where do you start with people like that?
I tell them, don't waste your money hiring me right now. You need to get to market and get product market fit or make money. And nowadays, there's so many resources out there. I launched Mekanic on a Friday night. The business was up and running and handling clients on Monday. Specifically to your friend about this gas business, like to me, what's unique about the business model, right? Mm-hmm. Is it like you come every Thursday night and fill my gas like before I wake up in the morning on Friday and I know for the next 7 days I got a full tank? Or you're not even calling me and scheduling it, you're doing it and I'm getting billed a subscription at the end of the month, mm-hmm. right? I would be thinking about that. What do I do about my EV clients? Can I have battery boosters? I don't know if they exist. You've got an EV. Yeah. Like, can I have a booster charger in my car too? So I topped off your wife's Tesla or your husband's Tesla, and I filled up the Bronco. Mm-hmm. I think that there's something there, but to your point, I think not to put words in your mouth, but it's like, what is it that you're doing and what's going to get people excited? You've built a really cool business off of something that is inherently just boring contractual work that I don't think anybody, before I met Allied, I was like, whoever my title company is, it's like my realtor put into the contract and I just sign a piece of paper and show up. You've created an entire experience around it. You got to do that with any business these days. And I also think recognizing that it's going to evolve and change. And so a lot of times I spend a lot of time with clients or prospective clients just talking through those things and making sure they know where they're going to get revenue. In a sense, stage one, step one might be just a brainstorm conversation, right? And so this guy, and in my mind, I bet you he's thinking, it really matters what my name is and the logo, and in fact, that's what he told me. It might not matter as much as he thinks, but he is going to have to pick one. So to go through that process, I mean, I'm assuming he wouldn't be able to afford you, but what should he do? I mean, like, if he can't afford you, to come up with those things, he should talk with his wife about it. He should talk to his friends about it. Like, he is going to need to come up with a name. Yeah. And so, and you don't want him to change it a year later necessarily, right? But you can. You can. You can. This is good. You can. I mean, I think that in the world we live in today, things change so fast-paced. People's attention is so limited. I think it depends on what industry you're in, right? Are you developing tech? I would say for this friend, to call me or to call any branding agency, I think a lot of people don't realize, like, at least with us, like, I'll spend 10 hours on the phone with people before there's even talk about a contract. In a lot of cases, I've talked to people for years before it materializes into anything, because there's no benefit into me building a brand for a business that's not going to succeed. With naming, I think there's a lot of different things that you need to think about. You know, there's some fundamental basics. Is the domain available? Mm-hmm. Are the Instagram handles available? Like, Mekanic on Instagram is some guy up in Toronto. He's very nice. If you're listening, dude, I told you I'd pay you for it. He hasn't posted on there in like 5 years. Yeah. I offered him like 10 grand for it. Yeah. Seems like a no-brainer. Yeah. He's like, nah. But so I think there's some basic things. But then I think it's about like the personality. Like, I didn't want a brand name I didn't want to create an agency named after myself. I didn't want to call it Hansen or Eric's. You know, like law firms is always like last names. A lot of agencies do that because I wanted the brand to live beyond me, hopefully, right? If you build a successful business, it's not about Eric, it's about the company and the brand. And so do you want that, or do you want it to be something about your legacy? Do you want, we've had people name it after their kids, or you and Matt, you know, naming it after your nicknames for each other. You know, do you want it to be fun? Do you want it to be playful? How short is it? You know, you don't want something that's long and hard to spell.
Oh, I like that on Escrow.com. Like that? Yeah. Little mistake there.
I'm just saying. But you overcame it.
Yeah, we figured it out.
Well, I think also think about who your customer is. Your customer is not going to be the person that's looking to save money. People are going to do this because it's convenient. You know, I think there is a market for that, but I think that goes into how do you name it? How do you brand it? Are you calling it I've Got Gas? Are you calling it Joe's Gas? Are you calling it Jaguar? Like, that's been getting all the attention right now. Like, what is it that you're trying to communicate to those people? I think is understanding who your audience is, what your price point is, how you're going to get them as customers. Right. Are you going to go to networking events? Or are you going to do it on Instagram? I think those all play into it.
Yeah, well, maybe. But he's planning on launching next year. We'll see when this launches. But maybe we'll throw out the name you come up with after you brainstorm with him. And of course he hires you. So
listen, it all comes back around eventually.
I love it. So I like where you're going with that, which is, and I really believe this too. It's like, it's a variety of everything you do, right? And so like when people were asking us like, hey, what's the silver bullet for a title company? It's like, that's where I think a lot of people get stuck. Oh, if I get the handbook from this company, I'm going to be successful. Well, if you want the handbook, you can basically go to our homepage and we tell you everything that we do to differentiate. But I think the key to business is how do you constantly innovate and all those things change on a continuous basis. So I question you on the branding side of things. Is like in 2024 versus 2012, or is it all kind of the ecosystem of everything?
Well, I think there's a couple of different ways to look at that. One is digital and video. Whatever business you're in at this point, people watch video and people are on their digital devices. So it doesn't matter what age group they are, whether they're 12 years old or my 96-year-old grandmother, they're on devices. So I think the big difference over the past 10 years is just how dramatic that is. If you're not on digital, you're going to struggle. Look at Allied Title as an example, right? You took one of the most boring parts of the home buying process, or perceived most boring part, which is signing paperwork and the exchange of information and signatures. And what I think you all did, and I'm going to assume just because I know how smart you are that this was intentional, but even if it wasn't intentional, I think it's your differentiator, is you actually found one of the most important moments in the home buying process in which there's the exchange of keys, and you tapped into kind of the emotive excitement of that. You differentiated by saying, hey, there is a moment in the home buying process that is being drastically overlooked, and we can change this experience for the buyer, the seller, the realtors, all the people involved by making it fun, by making it enjoyable, by celebrating this moment. How do you bring it to somebody's house? When laws change and you can do everything electronic, how can you still create those moments of surprise and delight for your clients and prospective clients and customers to be like, oh, they're still doing this. I heard this comedian on a radio show a couple of years ago, and he's talking to the host, and he's kind of giving the host a hard time. He said, as soon as I went from doing stand-up to, I can't remember, TV or movies or whatever, I stopped getting calls from the radios because they just assumed I was too big time now to want to do the radio shows. And he was like, so I was super frustrated, and I was sitting there thinking, how do I let all these radio DJs, and for the young people out there, it's the thing in the car that if you hit FM or AM, it's a whole different world. But so I picked out like my top 20 DJs that I had interviewed with in the past, and I sent them a life-size poster of myself that said, hey, I still do radio. And he's like, I was booked on radio for the rest of the year. Those are the things that I think matter.
I can see them like, I gotta call this guy. Like, you really sent me this thing? I think I love you on your radio show. But like, you can't not think about it. You can't not talk about it with your whole team. And I think it's those little things, right? So like, that's what we try to do here is like, what can you do from the time someone ratifies a contract to the time they close to make them feel special, to get them thinking, to provide some type of experience they'll remember. And I guess every company, in a sense, needs to be thinking about that. Take me along the journey you have. What are the times you can surprise people throughout that journey so they're remembering you?
Well, we work with a lot of different clients, a lot of work in associations and nonprofits. We work with a lot of professional services. Many of them have not been overly creative, but I remind our clients all the time, we had a client's like, oh, our clients are all lawyers. I'm like, lawyers, despite what you might think, are also human. We as humans, 90% of the decisions we make are not based off of quantitative data or in-depth research. It's based off of intuition and emotion. And if you're not tapping into those emotions and behaviors and surprising people and delighting people and creating moments of that they will remember, I mean, you're not going to get anywhere. Read the book Unreasonable Hospitality. It's the book is about in the hospitality, that's all you've got. You've got these moments where people are coming for a celebratory dinner or a business dinner or just for going out. And if you can create a moment in those hospitalities, and then how do you take that hospitality and apply it to any kind of business,
Sure,
where you're dealing with lawyers or doctors or patients or nonprofit, for-profit, big oil. We're all humans.
Yeah.
And we all laugh and cry, get angry.
Yeah.
And if we can tap into those emotions, and I think you guys do a spectacular job at that. I think even as an agency that does it, sometimes my biggest problem is like the cobbler's shoes syndrome. We forget to do it for ourselves.
It was funny because you even said to me one time recently, hey, I might hire you guys to shoot videos of us, because it's hard for you to do that when you're in the day-to-day. And just like, you almost need someone to direct them what to do, right? Because you're so busy solving problems for other people, right?
I agree 100%. And I think it's also good to get out and work with other people. Getting out of your comfort zone. Yes, I have a whole creative team. Why not bring in another creative team to help us look at it differently?
Can a name be that bad, though?
Yes, because they can associate with the wrong history, the wrong feeling, the wrong tone. I got a buddy of mine, his name's Andrew Tate. He's got a great business in gut health and in upcycling and in natural kind of ingredients using ancient mandarins. He was trying to figure out a way to deal with the other Andrew Tate, who there's a lot of controversy around on social media.
Right.
And my buddy, not a creative, but a very creative person, spent the weekend cutting up a video where it's all these celebrities being like, Andrew Tate? Do you know Andrew Tate? Do you know Andrew Tate?
Yeah.
And he made this whole video of celebrities talking about this other Andrew Tate, and then he's like, you thought they were talking about that Andrew Tate, but I'm the one that's here. And it was like, how does he take a bad name and use it to his advantage?
Sure.
So I thought it was a really creative way to do it. But I think you can overcome almost any name challenge with the story and the experience you create around it.
Is that something you see continues on, or is this because of domains that these names are popping up, in your opinion?
I mean, it's one, people trying to be creative, differentiate Mekanic with a K instead of a CH. But it's also because you can't get the domain name, you can't get the ownability. Nowadays, there are so many businesses, there's so many startups. One of the most frustrating things is there's all these people that start a business, then they don't do anything with the business, and then they lock up the name so that a real business can't use it. Sure. I deal with this problem all the time, and it's super frustrating. Listen, AI is going to solve the problem, I'm sure, one way or another. I'm planning on AI just fixing everything for us.
Of course it will.
By the way, AI, great place to do brainstorming. AI is a great assistant. I don't see it as a replacement tool.
Having conversations with ChatGPT or whatever.
I don't see it as a replacement tool, but how do you use it to augment and support your work? And I think for naming ideation, it's a great tool.
What is your process for names? If you guys are you brainstorming with ChatGPT? Are you all in a room together? Are you randomly sending ideas out over email? What does that look like as you're naming a company?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of all of that. We do a lot of facilitated workshops and discovery work with our clients. peeling back the onion, so to speak. Once we do that work, during that work, one of the things we try to identify is the type of name a business or an organization wants, right? Do you want a literal name? Do you want an amalgamated name where you take two words and put it together? Do you want a historic name? So there's kind of like 6 to 8 like standard naming practices. Do you want a completely abstract name, like what you see in pharma, right? Like they just make up just letters. I think they just throw them down and then see what it spells. And then, so we start with that. What are some of the parameters? Are there words that we want to make sure we stay away from? Are there words that we want to make sure it is inclusive of? So you try to give yourself some guidelines. Yeah. And then we go through a company-wide kind of brainstorming where we've got these shared Google Docs and people are just throwing up everything and anything. And then everybody kind of goes in and ranks them and narrows them down. And then our research team will usually take kind of the top 30 names that people seem to have affinity for and start doing some due diligence on domain availability, things like that. It's not an easy process.
It's a significant process. I mean, there's a lot of people involved. There's a lot of steps involved, right?
It's not an easy process, and quite honestly, like we've gotten caught flat-footed where we've thought we had a great name and find out in the middle of a presentation that somebody else owns the domain and we missed one of the due diligence on it, or we overlooked the due diligence on it. I mean, the Patent and Trademark Office, you can search everything for free on there, but it's work. It takes time, and then really to get buy-in on a name, you got to show the whole wrap around it. So you can't just kind of look at the name in isolation. You got to look at the name with the look and feel, the name with the story around it, and how does it kind of come to life. So it's a big undertaking.
Sure. You mentioned pharma. All right. So does anyone else have this like really strong opinion like I do that like those are the worst commercials ever? Why are there 100 people walking down the streets and singing together? And first of all, this has been going on for decades now. I've been making fun of the industry forever. No one out there's no creative agencies that are like, hey guys, maybe we should do something a little different. Like, I mean, do you agree with me on this? Am I missing something? Is this somehow one of the most effective like campaigns of all time and I just can't figure it out? Because I don't know anyone that likes them.
So I'm not a pharma expert. I do a ton of work in healthcare, but I don't do a ton of work in pharma. Here's what I'll say is look at what Mark Cuban is doing now to differentiate. What's his called? Mark's low-cost pharmacy.
I don't even know.
He's like, instead of calling myself one of these weird names, I'm going to just call it what it is, access to cheap drugs. But I think also a lot of those ads is because nobody really cares about those ads because really the pharmaceutical companies are dependent on the doctors to prescribe.
Yeah. I do know the Ozempic song. I mean, I know the song, so I mean, it just angers me, but I still can't get it in my head. So maybe it's working.
But I think what you've seen is that pharmacies, they want to keep the brand kind of in your head. So they want you to see these cheesy jingles. They kind of want this out there. But really, they're dependent on the doctor prescribing it. And so they're doing one-to-one sales, right? Look at all the documentaries about how effed up the pharma industry is and, the Sackler family and what they did. They didn't care what the ad said because you don't go to a doctor and I don't even know the names of my prescriptions for high blood pressure and cholesterol. And if anybody important besides Mark Cuban is looking at this, let's just hope that they make medicine accessible to more people for a lower cost. It's ridiculous.
That would be nice. That would be nice. What's your take on like creativity as like a muscle? I mean, is it something people can get more creative or they are or they aren't?
Oh, 100%. Painters become great painters because they paint 10 million paintings. Writers become great writers because they write 10 million words. It's the practice, right? If you're a great writer, do you get up every morning and write for the sake of writing, whether it's good or bad? If you talk to content creators, the amount of content, these influencers that you think are just creating like this random viral video, no. They produced a million videos that you didn't see. You're only seeing the one creative video. They get better. Comedians. I went and saw Jerry Seinfeld in Las Vegas a few years ago and watched this whole show, and then it went on and on and on and on. It was funny, don't get me wrong, but it got a little long. He was practicing for his Netflix series that came out 2 months later, because when I watched the Netflix series, I was like, he did every one of those jokes. He was just practicing on us, and he was just working that muscle.
So, okay, that's interesting. So for those out there that look at themselves as not creative people, what would you suggest? Is it about doing content? Is it about reading books? Is it a combination of all?
Listen, if people want to get creative, I think it's about getting more experiences, putting yourself out there in the world more. Because the more you get out there, the more you kind of see, oh, and then be intentional about like what you're observing. Like I talk a lot about this with my staff. Like go to a restaurant and really figure out what you loved about it or what you hated about it and write it down to the detail. Like, is it the clothes that the server's wearing? If you go on a trip, don't just take pictures of pretty places, but spend time thinking about like what makes this a memorable experience, right? And I think all of that external, once you start to really observe that, it helps you think differently about how you behave, how you act, how you work, how you create. And then I think there's a lot of boring people out there that should just, stay boring.
Stay in their lane.
Yeah, stay in their lane. We're the funny ones. Leave it to us.
Love the rapid fire questions.
All right.
One tool you'd never give up, old school or digital?
I'm a pretty big fan of my comb in the morning and making sure I can brush my hair.
Well, you got some great hair. We've talked about this a lot.
More and more am putting distance between myself and my phone. I actually feel like the other night I was like, oh, I gotta stop. My phone I'm dependent on for work, but more and more I'm trying to get it out of my life.
One tactic to get unstuck when a project hits a creative block.
I need to talk things through with people. Like, I just need to shoot the shit. I have my friend who's my hype guy. If I call him, he's going to be like, you are the best, man. He will make me feel amazing. I have my other friend that is willing to go into just about any business venture. I think you know him, but you call him up and you're like, hey, got an idea? He's like, all right, let's talk about it. I've got my friend who will be like, I think you're wrong. I've got my friend who is super creative and doing a lot of stuff. I mean, I call you, often to just chat or we'll text back and forth. I think for getting unstuck for me is around having a community of people that get me just to have a conversation that gets me out of my headspace, and then typically I find my way back to where I was looking for.
Most interesting brand you've seen recently?
Jaguar. Take away their logo,
Yeah.
take that out of the discussion. I think they are trying to do something interesting because they have to. You got to do something different. You got to Hail Mary, right? So I'm going to be interested to see what happens next year with them.
And for those that don't know, the story you were talking about earlier, like what is the, like I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't know exactly what they're doing right now.
Any media is good media these days, but Jaguar came out with a new logo and a new concept car and a new commercial that essentially took the physical Jaguar out of the logo. It's still used as like a visual accent or element within the car design and the brand system, but they went with a super futuristic typeface, all these bright colors, this crazy concept car, and they're coming out with, they kind of did a marketing campaign when they don't have anything to market yet. So they just showed a concept car. Concept cars are never what comes to market. A new potential car isn't slated to come out until 2026, but everybody's talking about it. But the cars, so they were in the high-end market, right? That's where they played was, I think, call it $60,000 to $150,000 car market. They're moving into the 100, I think the like minimum price is going to be like, 130, 150 to the $500,000 car price.
One thing you've always wanted to learn but haven't yet.
Piano, easy.
You are a good guitar player, right?
No, I'm not musical at all. Piano has always been one of those things that like I felt like one day I would just sit down and play.
A book, show, or podcast you can't stop recommending.
The Jackal was awesome. The show.
I don't know about it. Netflix?
No, I think it's Paramount or Peacock.
Okay.
One of the Paramount or Peacock. Amazing.
What's it about?
An assassin.
Okay.
Like it's
an assassin.
Yeah.
Spy, assassin.
Yeah, spy, assassin. And book. I'll go back to the book I recommended earlier, which is a book I've recommended on LinkedIn a million times, which is Unreasonable Hospitality. You can apply it to any business that you're in, and it's truly genius. And
well, it sounds like kind of one of the things that we talked about, which I would agree. If there's one takeaway for businesses out there, people out there running a business, is like think about something you can do next week that will surprise your customers and make them feel wow. And imagine if you did that a little bit more, and you're always innovating.
You got to make time to create those moments, right? You got to make time to talk to your customer. Take time to ask. In my line of business, we have to do a lot of proposals. We don't win all of them. I take time to ask the ones that we don't win, why didn't we win? Some of them don't respond. Some of them do respond. The ones that do respond, usually there's a lot to take away from it. So I think for the businesses out there that are kind of just puttering along, it'll give you juice. I think about Yates Car Wash in Old Town. They have and continue to make improvements so that when you go to get your car wash, it's a good experience. There's music playing outside. There's people hanging out. There's, some food and beverage and snacks inside. They've got a TV. Now they got an arcade in there. No business has to be boring. The future has no place for complacent brands.
I think that's right. And I mean, the other thing is people will notice. There's a few industries where I'm like, how are they still have like horrible websites in the auto world?
Every time you take your car for service, like if you go to the dealership and I bring in my Toyota to get it fixed, when they're done, they hand me a stack of 15 papers that I need to sign. What day and age do we have to, and then they like staple it and file it and fax it. I'm like, what century are you looking at? When I bought my car there not too long ago, they were like, we completely modernized. We have this whole new technology. You don't have to sign any paper. They turn on the desk, and the desk is a screen.
Okay.
And then all it was electronic scanned versions
It was
of the PDF.
Yeah.
And I still had to
You still
sign
decide.
every single
Even though it was
page.
a screen.
And then they printed it out
Oh.
afterwards. I'm like, how is this any better? I just don't think that they've had to care. And until you got companies like Carvana and Tesla and people who are rethinking, who are saying, no. If I have pre-approved to buy a car with the loan, whether from the dealer or from my bank, it should take 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I should walk in and somebody should toss me the keys and then the fireworks go off and then they're like, go fast. And then I just like peel out of there and there's a bunch of people like making the experience great. Instead, it's miserable. Every time my family and I have bought a car, my wife is like, I just don't want to go and spend 4 hours at the dealership. And every time I call the dealer and I'm like, how can you make this less than 4 hours? And they're like, we'll try our best, Mr. Hansen. But it never happens.
It never happens.
It's all about labor and fair wages. Do you have a brand that people kind of want to work at? Can you provide them money where they're going to show up? And can you hire enough people to clean the bathrooms? I think most of the places that don't have clean bathrooms anymore is because they're short-staffed.
Fair. But this was more, they need a renovation. They need to tear it out.
Well, that's a different story.
And they need to
first of all, let's just get rid of McDonald's. Let's start there. I feel like we could get rid of McDonald's.
It's interesting because I have been to some McDonald's though, where it's like modernized and looks nice. I'm like,
I've been to McDonald's in Ohio that looks like a 4-star restaurant. There's a chandelier. You're like, strange. But listen, I shouldn't say. I want you to throw out McDonald's for health reasons, so we have a healthier country. But if you go to McDonald's and you like McDonald's, I'm not judging you.
Sure.
Just go to the ones that have chandeliers.
Exactly, right? That's it. Yeah. Hey, bud, great to see you. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it.
If anyone's out there and needs creative advice, this is your guy. So I appreciate you. You've helped us out with a lot of things, so thank you.
Likewise.